Stru- I gave a little light structure for tonight just to give us a framework. Um, I know that we're a bunch of revolutionaries on the call, overthrow the structure. We can do that, but um, I put it in the chat, and our G rules or our ground rules will be well. First of all, I don't know if Miss Rebecca Robbins wanted to check in and talk about our why for the call tonight, but my comrade and fellow Leo, if you're on the call, if you'd like to speak to it, I will make a space for you.
Hey, Omari. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. This is uncharted waters we're all in, and it seems like the only thing that we can really count on is each other. And I didn't really know when I called Omari this morning, I said, you think we ought to do something, even if it's just us. And so we just put it out there. Bear with us if it kind of is not seamless. We're all trying to figure this out together. I just appreciate y'all so much. I'm here to listen more than anything. So I know that Omari knows what he's doing. So I'm following his lead.
All right. So I'll welcome everybody, and then I'll just go over kind of our structure, and then you can let folks check in. But as Becky said, we just wanted to hold the space for folks. It's been a heck of a week, not that we haven't had weeks in our for amidst the pandemic. We definitely wanted to hold a space for us. So speech and verbiage, not that I have anything less than expectation, but I do want to frame it to speak with dignity for self and others. And I think that we can communicate about the system and maybe even about those specific officers and so on involved. But I ask that we can monitor our language and verbiage and keep it in a dignified manner. Three-piece just means when we get into kind of our segmented talking, as the call is filling up, I figured maybe 3 minutes might be a good cutoff point, maybe even 2 if we're getting at that plus 30 mark. And feel free to use the chat to kind of ideas in. And if I can track the chat, I'll try to pull out maybe some of the things, during the facilitation. What else? We do have a racial justice project, and the baseline of it is a racial profiling bill, which is focused on all cops having all stops documenting them. And you don't have to use this call to go into it a lot, but you can check it out on the ProNet website. And then if anybody wants to follow up and join that group or just have some further dialogue on this and other race matters, that's free. I'll put my business line, I'll put my email in the chat. And then if folks didn't get a chance to say anything maybe during the call and wanted it just to, check in that way, feel free to leave me a message. So we'll do a roll call, and I'm just asking folks to say your name, your people, and if you want to say your pronoun, and by people I mean your family, your organization, what you advocate for, and a one-word check-in. And I'll just put an example. I'm Omari Fox. I'm the son of Barbara and Alan Fox. God bless the day. And I feel somewhat indifferent. And we'll just do our check-ins. We'll do a reflection just on this week in particular and a lot of the other events that led up to this week. I broke out another section maybe beyond the hashtag, what does justice look like? And then a parking lot is more like maybe the last 30 minutes of the call. If there's a way to do crosstalk or folks just kind of want to popcorn in that way, it can be a little more unstructured. So I got a little advice from my commander-in-chief, so I will pass it to Marjorie, You want to check in?
Marjorie, Hammock, co-chair, South Carolina Network, and vice chair of the South Carolina Black Social Workers. And I will be yielding to my chief, Omari, for the duration of this effort.
All right. I'll pass it to Michael Rainkamp.
Michael Rainkamp, I'm from Lawrence. I've been pretty much angry most of the week, considering the past few days. I'm working with GSAT and with Progressive Network on fair maps.
All right. So what I'll do, I'll get a few more check-ins, and then I'll bring in new folks just periodically throughout the evening, but just so we can get into the call. So I'm going to pass it to Charleston, South Carolina, my friends Galen and John Marie.
Clay, connected to Tiny is Powerful. Totally shocked by what's happening. And I sent a message today in the social media for the first time in my life.
And Gillian, she, hers, connected to Tiny is Powerful in Charleston. For so many years, angry, frustrated.
All right, thanks. I'll do 2 more, and then we can just kind of get into it. And like I said, I'll get more folks on as we go through the night. To my comrade in ProNet, Mr. Wayne Borders.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wayne. He, him, his are my pronouns. My people, all y'all. The South Carolina Progressive Network, marginalized people in general, and specifically around issues of healthcare and civil rights and human rights. And I've been feeling honestly kind of checked out. You know, plus as I saw these things come up, you know, it's the same kind of script in a way. You know, people get mad, and you know, then people protest. And I will say the one thing that's been surprising has actually been the heartfelt responses and descriptions that some of the elected officials, specifically in Minnesota, have communicated. So hopeful, but you know, I can't follow it every single moment of the day. So.
All right, so I'm going to jump into our dialogue for tonight. And if you come in, if folks could maybe raise their hand if you're on a machine, that way I would help me a little bit with the queue. But I do want to pass it back to Marjorie, if you just wanted to kind of lead us off in some initial reflections. Gotta unmute, Marjorie.
I didn't.
You got
okay.
it. Yeah, you know.
All right. I said, I've been involved in organizations all my life, and this is my 84th year, so have seen this scene more times than I care to acknowledge. But here we are again, and we have nothing else to do but fix it again, and whatever that takes. And I hope this discussion will lead us to some sense of acknowledging the sorrow, but also acknowledging the power that we must exhibit in order to make this world livable. Carry on with the discussion. By the way, I would also acknowledge that Daniel is with us, Deweese.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Daniel. Say hello.
Hello, Marjorie. Hello, everyone.
Okay.
All right. If folks unmute, I kind of know I can kind of call on people. But does anybody wanna jump in with just some initial reflections? I don't see anybody unmuted yet. Danielle Lackey, would you like to check in?
Yeah, sure.
Daniel, I'm sorry.
As you can see on the screen, my name is Daniel Lackey. I'm still a spectator, I suppose. I have had some interest. I was a reporter at the state newspaper for about a year in the early 1980s. And I was assigned to the police beat, and one of my first stories was the murder of Michael Moore. And from that time on, I became interested in police violence, and went on to write some more about it for the state paper and other magazines. I live with someone who finds it very difficult to look at these images. And I couldn't help but think tonight, I did look at the news. I looked at that little gallery of entertainment we have every night at 6:30 on ABC or NBC and CBS, designed to sell us pharmaceutical products. And I did see that I saw Mr. Floyd murdered like 17 times. So there's a certain terrible cycle of constant recycling of the violent images. All I can say is I'm just reminded of one lesson I do teach. I'm a professor of English. I sometimes teach Macbeth, and I tell my students that I have a very controversial message about Macbeth. I have a theory as to what its theme is. And I say that the theory is so bizarre and so certain to be scoffed at that I don't even want to tell you during the class. I'm going to leave the class early and I'm just going to shout it out from the hallway. And my students are somewhat bemused when I go out into the hallway after the class is over and shout, "Murder is wrong."
Right.
And so I'm just going to say we're inured to it. It's an entertainment, and I think we really pushed the envelope this time when you saw a man crushing another man's neck for 8 minutes. So maybe that message will get through. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you for letting me join you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being on. All right. Mutes. I see Patricia Corley. Would you like to check in? All right. I'll pass it to a poetry friend of mine, MsTonya The Poet. Would you like to check in? I'm sorry, go ahead. One more time, I'm sorry. Unmute again.
How about now?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me in. My name is Tanya. I am a poet. I support local arts and community, and I work with youth through media. So I understand what media is about. I understand that sensationalism. I've worked in broadcast TV as a promotion producer for WBTW TV 13. So just understanding news and understanding the cycle. And one thing I'd like to say is that I wish somehow we could get them to stop showing over and over the images, because we got it. And I don't know how we can make it clear to them, because I know that they just have this continuous cycle of pushing a story, but enough is enough for me. I think I'm emotionally exhausted. And to be honest, for a person who, I mean, I love media. I like cameras. I like telling stories. And if you notice tonight, I'm not even using a camera and I'm fully loaded. But I just didn't even want to be on camera. I just don't even want to be seen. I just wanted to be here in my space and kind of relax. But when Omari invited me here, I knew I had to show up for him, because he's just a great person in the community. And I knew that anything that he's involved in that I'd definitely like to be a part of. So thank you for letting me join in.
I appreciate the affirmation. I'm gonna pass it to.
Hi.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Laura Cahue. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. I am with, I'm a member of the Progressive Network, and I am also with Fuerza Girasol, grassroots immigrant rights group, organized with Mi Gente. And I'm interested in immigrant rights, racial justice, and feeling tired, exhausted, but also determined, and getting ready for the long run and trying not to react and leave everything on the line where the media and all those other people want us to die. So I'm doing my very best to stay focused on our plan, stay focused on what we need to do in the long run, and finding a way of grieving without giving into the grief. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you for sharing that. So in our queue, I have A. Garrett and then Leroy. So A. Garrett, would like to check in? Let us know who you are.
Good evening. My name is Anita. I'm a current participant in the Majeska Simpkins class and a African who has experienced and observed this repetitive cycle, as Marjorie indicated. I would say that I'm feeling like the chickens always come home to roost, and I'm feeling like I'm appreciative of the Progressive Network. It is keeping its eyes on the prize and the long game with a number of the initiatives that are in play. So these incidents happen all day, every day across the globe and don't always get documented. I agree, as Tanya and others said earlier, that it is exhausting to see the recycling of this violence, but that we have to stay focused on what we can do to raise the collective consciousness, change things systematically, and hold one another so that we can do the work that's necessary. Thanks for the moment to be with you.
Yeah. All right, I'll pass it to Leroy, and in the queue we have Finn Taylor. Go ahead, Leroy. Unmute.
I'm with the South Carolina Lutheran Synod with the Reconciliation Project and the pastor of Christ Mission Church. And to say the least, that last night I was taken aback. And I will almost say that here we go again. And then I started thinking and praying that we must continue our conversations. We must continue working out something. So I'm so glad that we have this conversation going tonight so that it can alleviate some of the anger that's out there, so that we can continue to talk to the community and bringing us together as one. Because if we don't, then we're going to find that there might be an uprising all in our community too, which we want to happen. So we thank God for this opportunity tonight to start the conversation, but we cannot stop tonight. We must find a way that it must continue so that we can keep calm and then also get the equal justice that we need in our community and throughout the nation.
All right, thank you. And Finn, are you able to check in? Finn, are you there? All right, I will pass it to Melissa. Are you able to check in?
Yes, it's Melissa. Watson, thank y'all for having this platform tonight. I am Melissa Watson from Columbia, infrequent attendee of network meetings, usually representing the Deltas, Delta Sigma Theta, but I'm representing myself tonight. I am feeling tired. Is the best word to describe it. Borderline numb, but tired. You know, I haven't participated in the network and progressive movements and working for progressive organizations. I have felt in the past that, you know, we could reform the systems, that we could save the systems, that, you know, I wasn't on the side of we need to completely burn everything down and start over. But seeing what's happening in the last couple of weeks, I'm not sure the system or the institutions can be saved. I'm starting to get a much different outlook on things and on life. And it seems like we almost need to burn it all down and start over again. That's just where I'm at right now. I might be in a completely different place next week. But today I just don't see how, with the way our systems are currently structured, they're structured for white supremacy, they're structured for the things that we're seeing. And I don't see how we can reform and save the institutions and systems that we currently have.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Well, what's your question? Go ahead, Tanya.
I was going to ask, do we want to save these institutions that we have right now? Are they worth saving?
I'll open it to the floor. First to unmute and go for it. Go for it. Going once.
All
I just
right,
have a quick question. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay.
You
so
first.
So to the question of do we want to save these institutions? You know, I think honestly, like, don't we, like we already know, especially as Black people, we already know going in that these institutions were not built to serve us. They don't function in our best interests. And at every opportunity, the institutions of our community and government are hardened against us. And that is informed, like at least my view of that is informed by my understanding of our recent history from the 50s till now, and even, of course, our history in this country, you know, from the time our ancestors got here to, you know, that period when we gained some manner of human and civil rights in this country. And so going forward, at least if our progressive vision for the future is one in which all people enjoy not just their human rights and civil rights, but dignity and the ability to have an amount of leisure, then it would be my understanding that saving these institutions, it's probably not the correct word to use, but we want to subsume, we want to overtake these institutions, not just culturally, but with people who will actively, essentially, you know, turn the ship and reorient their function, reorient, you know, their missions, and just how they view not only Black people, but just humanity even. Because, you know, these institutions that, quite frankly, murder Black people, don't take care of us, and draw us into districts where our votes don't have power, are the same ones that murder the children of brown and Black people in other countries, exploit and rip off their governments. So save these institutions, I don't know if that's really the right word. I think reorient might be better, or even, you know, overtake might be a better word.
So is that a very humble, politically correct way of saying no? Because I don't think it's a matter of whether it's correct. It's just a very upfront, basic question. And I just asked the question based on, you know, said, I don't know if we should save these institutions. And so I just asked, should we be saving them?
Yeah.
So hey, hang on everybody. I'm gonna I want to get Jonathan and Dean in the queue, and then if then we can come back to this thread. So I do want to hold it, and if Jonathan or Dean want to dovetail any of this thread, that's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off. I just want to get as many voices as we could. Go ahead.
Can I say a word, Omari? This is Dean.
Somebody ahead of you. Hang on, Dean.
Oh, is he? Okay. Yep. Great.
I'll be brief. I'm Jonathan in Columbia, He series, and just here to be present. It's been a sad week.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure you got a space, and I was kind of calling on some folks too, so I appreciate it. All right, Dean, go for it.
Well, I've been doing a lot of back and forth with folks during the day, and just some of my recollections on this. I listened to a guy, I think his name was Mark Stallings from Voorhees College late last night, and he made some really interesting statements. The first one was that Martin Luther King was reported to have said that that riot is the voice of the unheard, and I can remember reading I don't know if it was Mandela's biography, or I don't think it was an autobiography, I think it was a biography, but it was the same thing happened to him, in the sense that that the government eventually came to him in prison and asked him to help, because Riot had become the voice of the unheard, and that his strategies were much more peaceful and reconciling than those of the people that were now representing the cause. And I think that that's something that you have to, unfortunately, and I know, you guys have, taught me a lot in, in being engaged in all this, is that, sometimes we have to let these things work themselves out. Is that, as much as I abhor violence, is that, those with power do not give it up willingly. And it's, as much as I hate all this, it takes something for people with power to be willing to negotiate and to do the right thing.
But
I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to pass it to Sarah. You ready?
First time on this call. I'm new to South Carolina from Michigan, and I have been looking for my people, people that think like-minded. And so that's why I'm on the call tonight, because I see that you guys are doing some good stuff and it's an opportunity. I'm down here in Somerville, which is not a hotbed of radicalism, I'll tell you that. But I do have connections. I'm getting active with the CAJM, the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, and they are doing some work trying to hold the police accountable, particularly in North Charleston. And I'm also active with the ACLU. So, and then a storefront community resource center here in Somerville. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. And I couldn't help but think of, like, how many times do we have to see this? First time I ever wrote a letter to the editor was when Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were killed in Chicago by a police raid. And that was 52 years ago. 52 years ago. I had to look it up. I couldn't even place it in the right decade, but it was 1969 that the Chicago police went in and just sprayed that place with bullets and killed them in cold blood. And I have been outraged ever since then. And what's happening in Minneapolis just feels like we just keep doing it over and over again. So there I am.
So much.
Oh, thank you.
Next up, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Martin. Are you there? Can you unmute? Dr. Martin, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. I've been.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let us know who you are and then, speak.
I'm Frank Martin, and my people are any rational group of people who seek empathetic social justice anywhere in the world. I have been listening to everyone be stunned. I'm trying to understand why people are stunned. I'm sorry to say that I think, and one person did mention the chickens coming home to roost. This is a logical extension of the choices that have been made by the American people to be led by a reality TV realtor who is not qualified to lead a society, who doesn't have the empathy or the capacity to do that. And so votes count, and decisions that people make politically count and the atmosphere that we collectively create as a nation count. I don't feel, well, actually what I feel is I think I'm feeling very clear. It's very clear that people make up the society and people have to make better decisions and people influence each other. And we all have to accept agency for how we think and what we do and how we speak our reality into the world. And what happened, obviously, is something that we've all seen before. When the young lady was saying that she remembered Fred Hampton being murdered in the 60s, of course, I'm old enough to remember that as well. And also the things that just happened recently in South Carolina, the Mother Emanuel murders, and then someone being taken for a hamburger, being shot in the back as Mr. Gordon was trying to escape. So the problem is, I don't know if the problem is the institutions, if the problem is the people who are not functioning properly within those institutions. I think it's important to understand what the institutions are. It's important to understand how things ought to work in a dialectical democratic republic. But if people don't understand that and don't participate or are being actively prevented from participating, all of those are systemic changes that have to be addressed, each thing in each environment very specifically. And I'll stop because I might go on for just endless hours saying things.
All right.
That's
Appreciate
okay.
it. All right, next up we have Kimberly. Did you want to check in? Are you okay?
Hey, this is Kimberly Tissot. I'm the executive director of ABLE South Carolina, and we are a disability rights organization that are led by people with disabilities. And you know, I really appreciate being invited to this call. We are, as a community who is used to different types of disabilities or different types of discrimination, we are disgusted with what has been happening, and we want to join forces to make a difference and you know, just make a difference in South Carolina to promote civil rights. This has been going on way too long for marginalized communities, and we've got to come together and fix it.
All right. Thank you. And welcome to the call. I appreciate you jumping on. I know I just sent you that message. All right. I'm going to pass it to Charles. Like, go for it, Charles.
Okay, I'm here now. Glad to finally be able to be on one of these calls because I work nights, so usually I plan to be on one, but I'm not on one. But I'm the most recent president of Midlands Transit Writers Association. We're pretty much only a Facebook group right now, although I've been trying to organize more meetings. But as I said by chat, I'm way past sadness and I'm angry. I really started to get angry when people said it's terrible he was killed, but then they wrote 4 paragraphs on social media about how burning down your neighborhood is so terrible. It's like you're concerned about property crimes and not a man's life and what that's symbolic of. And that has angered me beyond belief. And it's hard to describe. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Glenn. Would you like to?
Okay, so why am I angry today? Is because from early last night and this morning, I have been kind of aggressed by some friends to do more than what I have been doing. And I know, especially that person who led the charge is right. And at the same time, I feel I have for 20 years been engaged more than my peers or the peers I started with in Charleston, let's say, for more than 30 years. So I am in full doubt of what can be done. Because when I think in large numbers, when can be done and things like that, it just, I mean, there are millions of people thinking about that, that may sometimes have more experience than I have. So what I do is with my skills, and it might be slow, it might be individual to individuals, it might be not very loud protest, but at the same time, I'm not hiding at all. So anyway, that's where I am. And I know many white people who have treated us, Jean-Marie and I, for waste traitors, which when they start to do that in front, it's easy, it's good, then we can motivate a stronger discussion. But when it is just outside and you just heard through the grapevine or something, then what can be done if it's not a public protest? And that's not something I feel comfortable with doing USA.
All right, thanks, Glenn. Tom Reed, did you want to say anything?
While I was listening to all this, I cannot forget the first week I was in this country, 1969. And I landed in Buffalo as the first, what do you call that, first generation immigrant, I suppose, coming from France. And my wife at the time took me on a tour of the city of Buffalo. And we went to the nice parts of Buffalo, and then we crossed I forgot the name of that street, and we went to the east side of Buffalo. And we got to that section where there was this big building, and I asked, what is it? I didn't know anything about America, really. What is this building there? And she said, well, that's a public school. So I said, oh, wow, that's a pretty big building. So I look around, and then I see on the other side of the street, I said, what is this? She said, oh, the armory. That's the armory. And the armory, there was a big tank from the Second World War, and the gun of the tank was directed straight on the school. And I said, I think I understand America. I am afraid this has not changed much. It maybe is not the gun of a tank, but it's a gun of a pistol or whatever, and it's all the same. It's just, I am really revolted by all this, completely. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
All right, I'm going to pass it to Michael and then Jill. And then Marjorie, did you want to come back with anything?
No, I just said welcome, welcome, welcome to the gentleman.
All right, Michael Rainkamp, go for it.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot this week. I think about it every time my son walks out the door. I've adopted a African-American child 24 years ago now. And I feel helpless at times when I see the inhumanity of that cop. I mean, that man is begging for his life and he's ignoring. And it's a lot to do with white people coming back and not understanding the fear and the treachery of generations of people that have been what can you say, terrorized basically for generations. And it's just made me real sad and angry and fearful at times. That's all. That's all.
All right, thank you for sharing that. All right, next up, Jill, are you ready?
Yeah, I am. Hello, and thank you everybody for hosting this event and being here tonight. I live in Pendleton, South Carolina. I've been here, I work at Clemson. I've been up here a dozen years, and I moved here from Birmingham, Alabama, where I lived 30 years, more or less. Although, as you can tell from my accent, I am an unrepentant Yankee. I'm also a first-generation child of refugees, so that issue has a lot of importance to me personally, as do racial equality, social justice, and an end to white supremacy. Like some other people have said, since I got here, I've been looking around for my people and I don't seem to find them in the upstate. And it's not because there is a lack of progressive-minded people in the upstate. We just don't seem to be connected to things that are going on in Columbia and Charleston. And I'm interested in things maybe I could do to help facilitate that some. In terms of the events of this week, it saddens me when these things happen, but as people say, it's, you know, what's new is that somebody captured it on a phone and made it public so that those who don't believe that this is the way things happen can actually see for themselves. Yes, it is. And I don't like to see people rioting, and I like to see people take to the streets. I don't like to see people burning down grocery stores and whatnot, but it is a message from people who have, it's been said before, feel voiceless and are just tired of it. And that level of protest does apply pressure. And so I guess I'm feeling somewhat positive that people are at the I can't take it anymore stage. And I'm glad to see that there's a little bit of an effect in terms of the arrest today, although that's just a tiny drop in the bucket in terms of a start. For me, the solution, you know, is working together with a broad range of people with common interests, the common interest being what's best for the majority of people in this country who create the wealth that is ridiculously disproportionately in the hands of a few billionaires that run everything. What that's going to look like, I don't know, but I'm interested in talking to people who want to talk about what alternatives might be.
Leroy talking? I'm not listening. I'm not hearing.
Mr. Fox, do we have Mary Odell up next? Is that right?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I unmuted. I took my video off for a little bit. I'm no one official. I'm just a high school English teacher, and I followed the Progressive Network for a bit. So I do appreciate the opportunity for being able to listen in to what people are saying, and I would have to echo a number of things that I've heard tonight. I was specifically interested too. I've seen a few things across my social media about rallies tomorrow, and I took pictures of the post because I couldn't find them anywhere specific as far as if it was something that was legitimate or official. One is called Peaceful Police Brutality Protest, and then the other one is I Can't Breathe. So they're just on my phone. One's at 11, one's at 12. They're at the State House. And apologies for my appearance. I'm really highly distressed by the whole issue. So, but I was interested if those two things were legitimate or if they were just some kind of odd thing. They weren't Black Lives Matter. There were names I'm not familiar with. One was called National March for Black Lives. And the other one is Peaceful Police Brutality Protest. So that's who I am. I have to say I have cried the last couple of days over news. Married outside my race about 40 years ago. And really, I would echo what Marjorie said. I know you're sick of it. It's been longer for you, but I'm just so tired of it. I've got grown biracial children, a mixed grandson, and I'm just tired of it. I have students who just are so angry. They're high school seniors, they're getting ready to graduate, and they are angry. Once they graduate, they can Facebook friend me and I'll accept once they've graduated. But I'm already seeing my former students in the last 15 years. They're just so angry and tired. So I would say that's kind of what I am too. That's it.
Thanks for that, man. I know that was tough to share. I appreciate you adding your voice in. All right. Next up, I'm going to pass it to Junius. You ready, brother?
I joined late, so I'm not sure. Am I supposed to like check in?
Yeah, just let us know who you are and just reflections on the week.
Yeah, my name is Junius Douglas, recent graduate of Benedict College. Currently an educator for Richland One, Black man, living in a nightmare. I don't have my picture up because I don't really care to have my image on, but as you can tell from the shaking of my voice, I'm not crying, I'm not emotional. It's just like I'm at the end, and I don't wish violence on anyone. My stance has always been anti-violence, pro-peace. I always ask for God to give me the will to defend my ability to be at peace. And I'm just being proactive. I'm not wishing violence. I'm not marching. I'm just being proactive because it's me, it's my family, it's my neighbors with the target on our back. So just gotta be proactive and be peaceful, be pro-peace, like anti-violence. Don't know what much more to do. Like you blatantly see it happening, even the charges being that they dwindled it down from it. We seen it was blatantly murder, but they dwindled it down to third degree murder. So we might be expecting this guy to get off 15 years. So, and if that, maybe a whole acquittal. So this is a reoccurring theme for us. So it's like, you telling us not to burn down, or them in Minnesota not to burn something down. And they're living in a terrible rerun. We all are. So I'm just being proactive. Cause I fought too hard to get to where I am now. No record, no delinquencies on my personal character. And we still get the shit into the stick, excuse my language. But I'm good. I hope everybody else is good. Hey, God bless you.
All right, thanks, brother. I'm going to pass it to Norma. Are you ready?
Let's see how I do this.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Just go for it. We can hear you.
Okay, I'm Norma Mackey, member of Christ Mission Lutheran Church, where Reverend Cannon is our pastor. Also work with Stacey Atkinson with The Door Home, and I'm just glad to be a part of the group this afternoon. Found out about it late, but I made it. So I'm just here with to support. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. You're quite welcome. Thanks for joining. I have Brett with no electricity. Brett with no electricity. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's his. He just changed his legal name to Brett with no electrity. Also, congratulations. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brett.
That's my high voltage stuff. Hello. Okay. I'm gonna have to turn off the
Sound isn't so good.
Omari?
Yeah. Go
Can
for
you
it.
hear me?
Yeah, go for it. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm using a remote speaker on a laptop in a darkened room. There was a large noise and everything got dark and the dogs were barking. It was a dark and stormy night, but we're really appreciative of everybody coming and sharing with us. This is one of the things that we would like to be, is a platform for people to feel and share a safe space, but also to think about what can we do about it. And one of the things that I would pose for people to ponder is, what can we do beyond protest? And I was in South Carolina when the Orange Grove Massacre happened. And I was organizing social justice then, and there was a lot of deaths in 1968 and 1969, and that if we can't become inured to the bad stuff. One of the worst things that can happen is you lose your ability to be outraged. But that's not enough. You've got to be able to turn that outrage into constructive work. And so that is why 1978, started the grassroots organizing workshop to institutionalize. 1996, we started the Progressive Network. And we're just, we are a small, struggling, bright light here that's been covered up by so much bigotry and hatred. And Gilda Cobb Hunter, one of the people who helped found the network in 1995, she said, we didn't set out to be a secret society. It just works out that way. Because we're speaking truth to power. And what we're doing is we're saying, this ain't new. What they do is they erase our history. I mean, in 1885, the New York Times read a headline about the killings from the Hampton Red Shirts when they were beaten back Reconstruction. And they said, the headline said, not since the time of the pharaohs had there been such an exodus of Black people leaving South Carolina because of the violence. And we forget that, and we have to relearn it, and we act like it's new. We have to build institutions that can be outraged and thoughtful and strategic at the same time. So that's what we're trying to do, and I'm so proud to be working with Omari and Marjorie and the other network officers and members, and we welcome all of you to a productive, enduring work to keep this thing alive. Well, thank you, Omari.
Yeah, I'm honored to be there. I'm glad to hold this space. So, Vivian, are you okay? You want to pass? So I'll just hold a little silence for you, and then I'll pass it to Cecil. No? All right. Well, we're at 8:30, kind of in our free for all space, but I did want to get as many or all the new voices left on the call. Would anybody else like to check in? Just go ahead and unmute and jump in.
Hi, this is Shannon. I was in at the beginning of the call by phone, and then we had a horrible thunderstorm and got disconnected, and I finally got my computer back up. So I'm very thankful that the call is being recorded so I can hear the meat of what I missed, but it was certainly heartening to hear the voices of people that I know and love right now, and to hear some new voices too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. Any other new voices to the floor? I want to make sure I get all the new voices. I see a bunch of phone numbers. Anyone on that called in directly, would you like to unmute and check in?
Hi, Omari. My name's Pamela, and I'm new. I moved here from Southern California in December. I'm really grateful for everybody on the call and for the organization. I'm looking forward to learning more about you guys. I'm looking for handles on what actions, I can take as a newly arrived white woman in South Carolina, and looking for guidance on the way forward, feeling the anger and the depression of this week and the generations and so many wise people that have spoken before me. And I'm very grateful to be with you all tonight. But at the same time, I'm just seeking words for action items, what to do next. Thank you so much.
All right, definitely shoot us an email so we can stay in the loop.
Yeah, I did that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. Any other new voices to the floor?
Yeah, Charleston talking here. Someone was saying that what can we do? In Charleston, we have this project called Tiny is Powerful at this point, and it's working with very small businesses, which are mostly, or used to be mostly, Black in Charleston. There are still some, and we're trying to keep this legacy going. And I think that's a very important way to honor what African American people have done and are still doing in this country. Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry, I had to run, y'all. Car windows up. All right, new voices to the floor before I pass it to a couple more repeats. So I'll kind of go into a little something as far as the action item. Dr. Martin, can you hear us? Can you unmute?
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah. So if you check out the New Legacy Project podcast, one of the talks that we had between myself and my mentor, Dr. Martin, and I asked him a question about like allies that are problematic. And then we also have a lot of dialogue when people say like as a white person or as a this or that, which already kind of creates a natural division. So can you dovetail or jump in on just any thoughts about ally, being a friend to the struggle, and just, a little bit of what we talked about on that podcast?
Sure. I mean, so I've been having another conversation with a person I met on Facebook about the whole concept of race reification. And it's difficult for people to think in non-racialized terms because we've been conditioned culturally to assume that race is actually something that exists, whereas biologically it's been pretty soundly refuted as a thing that is there. However, of course, constructions of identity can actually damage real people, as we saw in the case of power and control with the deaths in the past few weeks. So
I have always taken the position that I don't think it's possible to undermine racialized and racist thinking if you're operating in or within constructs of race reification. So if somebody identifies themselves as a white ally, it means they are identifying themselves as something white that is an ally with something else, which means they're creating a separation between themselves and other things that they consider to be non-white, as opposed to being a human ally. And if people who are naturally xenophobic and suspicious of things that are dissimilar from themselves could come to understand their shared humanity, then the race-related issues would turn to other things. I mean, there will always be poverty, there will always be problems of education, there will always be problems of access, there will always be problems of power. There'll be economic issues that have to be resolved because there are separations between and among people that are generated by the social structures we create. But those things are always shifting. And if someone sets up a self-identification premising themselves in their whiteness, that is usually a signal to me that, okay, something, you know, that person is obviously separating themselves. And that goes on, you know, generally because it's how they've been led to construct their identity. So I don't know how to open some kind of new discourse in a society where people are constantly being conditioned to default to race and racist structures. But I don't think that there is any way forward to emerge from the tropes and the stereotypes of those conversations if people just continue to reify race as a thing. Now, sure, people can certainly do their identity in terms of ethnicity. If you're European, if you are centered in Africaneity, if you're centered in some of the many different and diverse Asian cultures, that makes sense because that's about heritage and history. But race is a pretty stupid way to organize any kind of social interaction. It's a bad idea that was, it grew out of pseudoscience. And it's pretty much time probably to abandon it. But a lot of people are saying, well, how can we abandon this construct if it's creating so much social damage? Well, it's creating so much social damage because people want to abandon it. And it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So I look for people who are putting themselves forward first as human beings, as shared consciousness, as understanding, as a certain group of ethical issues. Those are the things that identify people more so than just what you look like. And race is coincidental to heritage and location and appearance. And it's often misleading. I mean, Rachel Dolezal decided she wanted to be Black, and so she wanted to do that. And when she did, she was condemned for identifying herself as a Black person because she was Polish. Whereas if someone like Quincy Jones' daughter, Rashida Jones, told people she was white, nobody would probably question that, although her father is a very well-known African-American composer. So she's a person of mixed ancestry. So race is arbitrary, and what's happening to people who are holding on to these racist tropes and tropes of authority and is a lot of what is going on is, in some instances, to some extent, a reaction formation against the empowerment of someone like Barack Obama, and that is still something the country can't even talk about. I mean, Mitch McConnell said his job was to make Barack Obama a one-term president, and a lot of the anger is expressed through men who have been able to hold on to this narrative of whiteness. I think people need to start negating that narrative. Just abandon the whole concept of whiteness. And then, since whiteness formed a foundation for most of the racial polemics, it seems that if that's abandoned, maybe the other things could be abandoned as well. So that may be a controversial position to take, but.
All right, Daniel has a vehement rebuttal to everything you said. So, Brother Daniel. No, I'm kidding. But I'm just.
I was looking forward to a vehement rebuttal. I like vehement rebuttal.
I don't know if I have a vehement rebuttal to my favorite Platonist liberal philosopher, as I call Dr. Martin, and I do say that respectfully, and I hope he has some affection for me as an Aristotelian Marxist. So yeah, but that being said, I'm not going to get too lost in this jargon. You know, there's been some talk about systems and institutions tonight. And one of my concerns is clarifying concepts. You know, what systems, what institutions? Are we referring to nation states? Are we referring to liberal democracy? Are we referring to global capitalism, etc.? Now, I think there's certainly a space to talk about these things. They seem like abstractions, but I think these ideas do have influence in governance, social relations, etc. But something that's been going through my mind, and it was something that Fred Hampton said, and I don't think you necessarily have to be a socialist as I am to agree with this. And I think this touches on what Dr. Martin said. He said, we don't fight racism with racism. We fight it with solidarity. We don't fight capitalism with black capitalism. We fight it with socialism, which for me speaks to more to a fundamental solidarity. And so I've been thinking of this notion of working with inside, let's say, the bourgeois state or liberal democratic state or what have you, and outside of it. And I think it's both and this was the wisdom of the Black Panthers in terms of dual power, you know, working within the infrastructure, but also building that egalitarian democratic force outside of it to put pressure on the state. And I think this is one of the mobilizations of the network, particularly with our racial justice project. And I like the way that Brett says it, you know, racism, white supremacy is a huge problem that seems like, you know, Ta-Nehisi Coates describes it almost as a metaphysical evil force. Like, how do we grasp something that seems like a deity? It's been reified, as Dr. Martin says. And I think we have to attack institutions concretely. And by that, maybe not attack in the sense of violence or, you know, what have you, but in the sense of working strategically to implement some reform which mitigates killing, the murders, the assassination of Black folks, such as, you know, our all cops report all stops. That is a concrete reform which facilitates some type of transparency. And it was passed. We did pass this. And then it went to subcommittee and 5 white men took it out, a certain clause, and it became all cops report all non-custodial stops, which is tickets. So they were not reporting all stops. And this was, you know, something very small in terms of taking a bite out of racism and white supremacy in South Carolina, but it would have had a concrete effect if there was transparency in all, I think, 300 plus cop shops in South Carolina. We could see who, if there was, let's say, an arrest in a population of a majority white community, but it was all Black folks who were being arrested, we could hold those cop shops accountable concretely, not in an abstraction. So I think this type of legislation can be effective, but it requires that both and, having comrades such as Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter, Mike Fanning in the state legislature, and also that outside force. And so I know I've been rambling a bit, so I hope I'm being clear with my message that it's inside and outside, right? It's, as Marx and Angela Davis said, it's grasping the antagonism by its root, which I think is what the network is trying to do. So I hope that was helpful and not too rambling. Yeah.
Saying is exactly what I'm suggesting. You know, when Daniel said not to attack the corrosive institutions of what is called white supremacy, but to undermine those institutions, demonstratively undermine those institutions, to erode them, I think that would be a goal. And it would be a strategic and a slow goal, because you're talking about changes in culture. And that will take a great deal of strategic thought. That will take time. And people are angry, people are exhausted, people are upset. Why are there so many instances of senseless, thoughtless murder and denials of humanity? That's the question. And it's part of it also is about professional training. Why would 3 people stand by after you've seen Eric Garner's problem, you know, not 3, 4, 5 years ago, and not do anything for 9 minutes while someone constantly informs the people around him that he is unable to breathe? That doesn't make that's an irrational act. So that needs to be explained by procedure, that needs to be explained by the institutions of law enforcement, that needs to be addressed within that particular city and with those officials and administrators who oversee the actions and activities of that group. And they have to account for that. And those people need to should be put on trial to explain themselves publicly. And that is how I think that this horrible public mental illness can finally be addressed.
All right. Any thanks Daniel and Dr. Martin. Any new voices to the floor? I believe Macy is queuing in to the audio. Macy, can you say something? All right, we'll come back. Any other new voices to the floor? We got about 10 minutes left.
I just wanted to say a little bit more about what could be said by someone who is in education for very young children, that still the difference is when you know that your children from 2-3-year-old are already, and we have to train them to live in fears. That's a different type of education. And it's a necessity. And that's where, I mean, a big conversation could also go from that.
I don't understand.
All right, any thoughts on that last thread, or folks just a new voice to the floor?
Hey, this is Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
So one of the things that I've been thinking a lot lately, and that was before this horrendous state murder of this young man, is how over the last couple of weeks, under our very noses and the distraction of the pandemic and the protesters and all of that, our local governments are redirecting funds that they have received through the first stimulus package to local police agencies. And many of those calls for those funds have been to increase protective equipment for police officers, as well as more surveillance equipment to help them fight crime. And we all know this narrative about first responders. Everybody's just been hearting all over police officers and first responders and doing all of this under the narrative of the pandemic. But I think that one very real and necessary fight that we can engage in is to organize, to demand the funding our police forces. Our local law enforcement agencies do not need any more money to keep killing us. And I think we need to reframe this and move away from these poor cops that we need to help. That's all I have to say.
All right, thanks, Laura. Mixie, can you go?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, go for it. Yeah, you're live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Maisie. I am a public defender in Columbia, South Carolina. And I am feeling pretty desperate, and I'm feeling really heartbroken for the communities of color. And I am thankful to be in this conversation.
All right, and if you want to come back later, you can just let me know. But thanks for checking in. All right, we got 8 minutes left, folks. Any new voices to the floor? Anybody didn't get a chance to check in?
Not to take the mic back, but I have gained a second win. There was also murder in Columbia in April, early April, of a 17-year-old, Joshua Ruffin, by a police officer. I know no details. I have, the community organizing side of this is not where my history is, but I feel like there's something going on there, and I wonder if this is a group to help figure that out in Columbia. I would appreciate any advice or thoughts that people have, and including, maybe if it's not a respectful thing to do for his family, maybe it's his family that needs to be spoken to first. I'm not sure, but I just can't. I feel like there's a conversation about Joshua that isn't happening, and I wonder why.
Thanks, Maisie.
Hi there, it's Marjorie. Could I have, Maisie, could I have the spelling of the young man's name? So that we could at least inquire.
Yes, absolutely. And I can put it in the chat, but it's Joshua Ruffin, Ruffin, Joshua, first name.
And that was here in Richland County?
Yes, early April. I think it was April 7th or 8th. His name wasn't released for about a week, but then all I saw was one news article. The officer was put on administrative leave. I'm not sure if he's back. He was off for about 6 weeks. I know, but I'm not sure if he's back now.
Omari, I actually heard the shots when that occurred. I was out on my porch and really just a couple of blocks away. So, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what the story was. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of officers about it, to the point where I haven't been overly concerned, but I agree. I think that, I'm not sure that we've heard a narrative since that time of exactly how the incident went down. I mean, I know what I heard, but it would be nice to get more clarification.
All right, we are at 8:56. I guess we can start to close out. But before we do, were there any new voices to the floor? I just didn't get a chance to check in. On once. All right, well, I'll give everybody a chance to, there's a function, if you want to save the chat, it'll save your one-to-ones and then the group conversation. So I know we dropped emails and a couple other things in there. So folks want to stay connected at that level, or drop your name in the chat real quick as far as a way to stay in touch. Go ahead and take the time out to do that now.
Marjorie again.
Can
I get that? Can I get Maisie's email again?
Yeah, I thought I just
posted it, but I didn't.
It's in the chat.
Do you want me to post it again?
Would you please?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to pass it to one of my ProNet comrades, maybe for just a summation or just a final statement before we close out. So anybody, any XCOM, ProNet members, Mama Jessica Schooler, anybody just want to give that last statement before we check out tonight? Wayne, I see you pop back on.
Yeah, I've been following the conversation. I just had to run and check on a couple things, but I think that we definitely should, as a community, and not just, geographical community, but as a community, a beloved community, continue to check in and follow up with the Joshua Ruffins situation. I definitely think that would help us to continue not only this discussion, but also making progress on the issues that have been brought up by this discussion as well. I feel very intense. Oftentimes, just other people's energies. So I just want to say how grateful I am and thankful that everybody has, shared and fellowshiped with each of us their pain, because it is not something you feel or are dealing with alone in this situation. So I want to thank you for sharing even through that that hurt. And I'm gonna step back and allow someone else to come in.
Omar, this is Leroy Cannon,
Yes,
and
sir.
I was just wondering if we will have a follow-up that we can expand our audience and keep this conversation going, because we do need multicultural dialogue, and we need to put things in action so that we can get some reforms and rules that we can make sure that people are following these guidelines.
I'm sorry, so you asked if there's a follow-up in place?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely extend the dialogue. If everybody could, if you're already on the Progressive Network mailing list, we'll definitely keep you posted there. You can also stay tuned in our Facebook group, and we'll definitely keep the announcements just like today. I appreciate everybody. First of all, I know we did this call on short notice, but we definitely wanted to hold a space for everybody. And then for anybody else, if you're not in one of those avenues to stay connected, just shoot me an email. So it's Omari at scpronet, OMARI at scpronet.com. I'll put it in the chat again real quick. And definitely keep people on the wire just as far as we go. And then definitely we'd like for folks to tag on to our racial justice project. So it's had a couple different iterations and just different energy levels, but it might be a good time for folks to really re-engage and assist us with that work. All right, I'll pass it to well, we had 901, last call for maybe another XCOM member or ProNet member to close us out before we leave.
Hey, Omari, this is Becky. I just want to thank you for doing such a fine job tonight. I take great comfort in being in the company of folks like all of you, and stay strong. Love you all.
All right, everybody. Well, we're gonna call it a night.
Good night, Marjorie.
So before you go, let's just we'll just take a moment of silence and just bless those who transition, and then we can leave. So. All right, everybody. Be safe. Get your mask game up. If anybody needs a mask or assistance in that level, definitely reach out, and we'll keep you on the wire. And for the Majeska students, we'll see you at the next class.
Till Monday.
Be safe, everybody. Peace and love.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All right, y'all.
Good night. Respect.
Y'all don't want to leave? I know how you feel.
Daniel, you hear me? Hello, Daniel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know. I came in the back door. Somebody needs to turn the recording off.
Yep, I just did.